Hi everyone, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are stamping just for fun. I have 3 cards that I created using the Breakfast Buddies stamp set and coordinating dies from Concord and 9th and Kristina, Werner. I really love this stamp set. I thought it was super cute and funny and hilarious, and it's one of those stamp sets that you can use to make cards for pretty much anyone in your life. The sentiments in that set are really funny and punny, and I feel like they work for so many different people and so many different occasions. First, I really liked the image of the egg, and a while back, several years ago, I feel like it's been more than 6 years ago, I made a card with a similar image for Simon Says Stamp. And I really loved that card. It was funny and hilarious. And I wanted to recreate that card or that design using the images from this stamp set. Here I have the stamp set. I have my mini MISTI stamping tool. I have hammer mill cardstock. This is actually my new go-to cardstock for stamping. I'm still using Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock for stamping, but I also recently purchased, I finally purchased the hammer mill cardstock. I've known about hammer mill cardstock ever since hot foiling came out, and I remember I was watching a video by Pinkfresh Studios and they recommended using the hammermill cardstock, and I ordered hammermill cardstock back then from Amazon, and my package got lost or something, and I just never received that paper, and I kept forgetting that I needed to order this paper. And finally, I think about a year ago or so, I went and placed an order at Simon Says Stamp for hammermill cardstock. It arrived. Things take quite a bit of time to reach me here in Ukraine, but it arrived. I tried that paper. I first tried it for some ink blending and I loved it. I tried it for stamping and I loved it. I'm yet to try it for hot foiling, but I'm sure I'm going to love it because it is so really nice and smooth. So that's the paper I'm using today. But you know, if you are using Nina Solar White or whichever is your favorite go-to paper for stamping, that works, just as well. Okay, so I'm first going to stamp a couple of eggs, well, actually a bunch of eggs for my cards. On the packaging, on the Concord and 9th website for this stamp set for Kristina, the egg is stamped using light blue inks for the actual egg white and yellow ink for the egg yolk. I didn't like that. I wanted my egg to be completely white, the egg white to be white. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's kind of hard to have, I don't have an ink color like that. So I kind of did a little bit of experimenting. I decided I'm not going to stamp the entire egg. Instead, I'm just going to stamp the other detail pieces to the egg. And by the way, each image, it's outlined on the stamp set. That makes it very convenient. Each layer is labeled. That makes it very convenient as well. So for this particular image for the egg, I knew I would skip the A1 layer. If you have this stamp set and if you're holding it in your hand, look at it and you will see that the A1 layer is the one that I just stamped using the lighter gray ink from Simon Says Stamp. And what I'm doing actually right now, I know I probably sound very confusing right now. So what I'm doing right now is I'm stamping an egg that I will use as a guide for all the other stamping that I'm going to do, where I will skip using any color for the egg white. So here I stamped the egg using flannel and Earl. I used light gray inks from my stash. Next, I'm going to stamp the egg yolk in citrus, I think. Actually, I actually used many different shades of yellow because I wanted to have like different shades of yellow for my eggs. It doesn't matter. You just need to use a nice, bright, vibrant yellow for this layer and you're going to be good. So what I'm doing is I'm stamping a guide first. I'm going to cut that guide out and I will then use it to stamp a whole bunch of other eggs for my card with a pattern. So here I've removed this panel from my MISTI. I'm using my paper trimmer. I'm trimming it down because I just need that egg. I want to reuse the rest of that paper and do additional stamping there. And next I'm going to use the coordinating die, line it up on the image, use my best ever craft tape to secure that in place, and cut this piece out in my platinum die cutting machine. That is off camera, so you're not seeing me doing any die cutting, but this is happening off camera. So here I've cut that out. I have the actual egg, and I'm keeping the negative piece with the die there as a guide. This is going to be very helpful because it's going to allow me to stamp all the other eggs in white, if you will. Since I already have the egg yolk positioned on the door of my MISTI, I'm going to go ahead and stamp that. I do need quite a bit of eggs for my card design. I want to have an entire A2 card front filled with fried eggs. So I'm stamping quite a bit. I actually have, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 eggs on the finished card. So if you're making an A2 card, if you are recreating the card that I'm sharing in this video, that's how many eggs you will need to stamp. I already had a few stamped, so I'm not stamping all 8 right now. I'm not showing that on camera, but that's how many you are going to need. So I'm just going to go ahead and do all of the stamping, and thank God for MISTI, because that makes it very, very easy to do. You do need a stamping tool, some sort of a stamp positioner tool, to be able to do this, or to make the process of doing this easier. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. With that done, I'm going to pop my die cut egg back into the negative piece and place that together with the negative piece and the die over my paper. I'm going to use the egg that I just stamped as a guide to position the detail shadow layer. Close the lid of my MISTI, pick that up, remove the guide, and then do my stamping. I'm using the lighter gray ink, that's flannel, and stamping that onto all of my paper pieces. I'm double stamping this just to make sure I have a nice impression, a slightly darker brown. So I go ahead and I add it onto all of the eggs. There are 2 detail pieces or shadow pieces to this image. On a couple of eggs, I stamped just this one, and then on a few other eggs, I added the other shadow piece just to make my eggs slightly different and, have a little bit of variation on my card, because I knew I'd be using a bunch of eggs, 8, and I wanted all of them to look just a little bit different. They are not actually going to be different because I'm using the same images, the same colors, but I wanted to try and make them at least somewhat different. So with that done, I then went back to my guide. I positioned it over my stamped panel. I used another piece of Bastera craft tape, taped it in place, and then I sent it through my die cutting machine and cut it out. So this allowed me to easily create a fried egg image without doing any stamping for the base layer. Here you can see I have the eggs with the gray background, and that looks okay, but the white eggs actually look so much better. Okay, the awesome thing about this Breakfast Buddy stamp set from Kristina is that you have faces, arms, and legs in the stamp set. And I think that is just so clever and so adorable. And I don't know, I really like that about this set. When you use the arms and legs and the faces and you stamp those, if you stamp those outside the edge of your image, the coordinating die is not going to work, because obviously the coordinating die only cuts the actual image, like the egg. But here I decided I'm going to stamp the legs and arms around the egg yolk. So not outside the image, but around the egg yolk over the white egg white. That's what I'm trying to say. I knew I would be using a dark colored background for my card just because I like doing that. That's my thing. I like dark colored backgrounds. So I knew if I stamped the legs and the arms outside the entire fried egg, those won't be visible on my card. So this is the reason why I stamped them the way I did. And honestly, I quite like that. And I think you can totally do that. And you can also play with the arms a little bit, have the arms go up or down, or have one arm be raised and the other one have it pointing down. You have options. And you also have several options for the legs. You have the legs facing right or left. You have the legs, standing together or spread a little bit apart. So it just creates a fun egg image or any image, because you can add those faces to all the other images in this stamp set. I die cut additional blank pieces for all of my die cuts. This is something I like to do whenever I cut pieces out, just because I like my pieces, my die cuts to be sturdier, even if I'm using thicker cardstock, even if I'm using Simon Says Stamp 110 a pound cardstock, I still like to back it up with another layer. Because this adds stability, sturdiness, there's no sagging, and I just like how my die cuts feel in my hand with that extra layer of cardstock. So I used glue and I glued those together, and then I added a foam adhesive from the back of each before adding them onto my card. So here I have a panel of Spellbinders brushed black cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I have created a card design already. I have placed the images onto the panel. They're not adhered yet, and I'm just going to add them one by one, filling the background in. I also stamped bacon for this background, for this piece. I used the Simon Says Stamp Guava and Punch inks for the most part. I was kind of experimenting with different colors of ink, but I feel like I like Guava and Punch colors the best. So I added each image one by one. You can also see that I have stamped a sentiment, and this one reads, "You are exceptional." Love that. By the way, if you want to make a card just with a bacon or, egg and bacon, you can have a different sentiment, and it can read, "Don't go bacon my heart." Love that one as well. Like I said, guys, this stamp set is just filled with fun sentiments and fun messages. There's one that says, "You're very special to me," and you do have berries in this stamp set. There's one that says, "Love you very much. Thanks a latte. Hope you have a not sure if I can pronounce that correctly, beautiful day. And no one stacks up to you." Awesome sentiments. With the images adhered, I used my Spellbinders scissors. Love these shears. And I trimmed all of the excess pieces off. I did use these small little pieces to fill the gaps that I still had on my background. I didn't use foam adhesive for the gaps. Instead, I adhered those using my Barely Art glue, and that always works best. I would recommend you use glue for smaller pieces like this, because with foam adhesive, they just tend to, wiggle or move, and it doesn't look right. When you have foam adhesive behind a larger sheet, a larger piece, a larger die cut, or a full die cut, that looks awesome. But when you have little pieces like these little leftovers, use glue to add them onto your card. To finish this card, I added onyx gems from Spellbinders in the background, and I just love the way this looks. I also added a white panel to the inside of this card because the card base is also made from black cardstock, not from the same brushed black cardstock. I just made the card base from regular black because I like to save my brushed black cardstock, so only regular black cardstock. And I added a white panel to the inside of the card. My next card features pancake, a cup of coffee, and a fried egg. To stamp the pancakes, I used cookie, cocoa, and maca inks from Simon Says Stamp, along with butter, and I believe I used honey for the butter piece at the top of the pancake. Now, to stamp the coffee cup or the latte mug, which I actually really like in this stamp set, it's a fun image. It has 4 different layers, and I kind of struggled a little bit at first when I was doing the stamping. I couldn't figure out, but once I stamped it once or twice, I realized what I needed to do and what colors or what shades I needed to use, and I stamped a beautiful coffee cup. Now, I will also say that it helps to use a pencil eraser and prime your stamps. I don't do this every time. In fact, I typically forget about this, and then I do my stamping and I struggle with getting a good impression, and then I remember, I should probably use my pencil eraser, prime the stamp, prime the surface of the stamp, and then I do that, and it gives me a much, much better impression. So here you can see on that third coffee cup, the image was stamped better. Like, I have a solid ink coverage. So if you ever If you enjoy using solid stamps, not outlined but solid stamps, although this works for outline stamps as well, make sure you have a pencil eraser and just prime your stamp before stamping. It really does help. So to stamp the coffee cup, I used Sunbeam, honey, clay, and cappuccino inks. I first tried using latte ink to stamp the liquid inside the cup, as that's my drink of choice. I prefer to drink a latte, but latte wasn't dark enough. I kind of wanted the liquid in the coffee cup, I wanted it to be a bit darker, so I used cappuccino. And I actually like that Simon Says stamp inks, that they have these colors, and they're like latte, cappuccino, mocha, depending on the type of coffee that you like to drink. So that's how I created the images for this card. Of course, I also had, I already had one fried egg image, and I added that one to this grouping. I created a background for this card by adding some stamping using another stamp set from Kristina, and I used these splatter texture stamps. Those are fantastic. I actually want to make a few more cards using these stamps, but I haven't had the time. Here, I just wanted to add some little texture, visible texture, not actual tactile texture, but just visible texture to the background of this card. So I used one of the stamps. I stamped it using clear ink, watermark ink. So this gave me a tone-on-tone look, a tone-on-tone result. And I did my stamping on the Spellbinders Seaside cardstock. Actually, no, it was not Seaside. It was Breeze. So I stamped this on the Spellbinders Breeze cardstock. That created the front of my card. I have an A2 card here. And I just foam mounted all of the images on top. So super, super easy card. And then my card number 3 is one with the berries. I have your berry special to me sentiment here. And to create that card, I once again used inks from Simon Says Stamp. I used morning, dusk, and night to stamp the blueberry. And then I used punch, cabernet, sangria from Simon Says Stamp to stamp the strawberry. And I also used the Alt New blush ink to add the highlight to the strawberry, and perfection ink to stamp the little green piece on the strawberry. So those are the ink colors that I use. I just stamped a bunch of images. I had 6 blueberries and 3 strawberries. I cut them out. I once again backed them up with additional layer of cardstock, and I just foam mounted them onto a white card base. This is a super simple, this is not a typical card for me, but I kind of wanted to have a white background here, and I really love the way this looks. Yeah. So this is a look at the cards I have for you today that were stamped just for fun using the Breakfast Buddies stamp set from Kristina, Werner, and Concord in 9th. All supplies I talked about in this video are listed and linked in the video description below, and also on my blog. There's a link to the blog in the video description as well. And on the blog, I also have images of these cards if you want to pin them or save them for later. Thanks so much for joining me today, spending time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to create. Love you guys, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.